Long day of work. He knew the route well, as it was the same one he had taken every night after his shift was finished. The man had never before experienced any trouble on his commute, as the path he took was through mostly quiet neighborhoods. But tonight would be different, as not long into his walk he noticed a car driving erratically on the road. The car went right past him, but then the driver put it into reverse, and before he knew it, the car had parked right beside him. With a gun in hand, the driver then leaped out and ordered the man into the back seat. As he continued to drive carelessly, the man looked out the window and noticed that he was being taken to Elmwood Park, an upscale neighborhood that rich businessmen and politicians alike called home. Here the car came to a stop outside a luxurious home. Inside the house was a woman in her 40s. At gunpoint, the driver then forced the woman to perform oral sex on the man he had kidnapped while he sat in the corner and watched. After the ordeal was done, the terrified man was let go and he promptly ran from the house to the nearest police station. After a short investigation, detectives learned that the kidnapper was none other than Mad Sam DeStefano, an infamous loan shark for the Chicago outfit who was feared throughout the criminal underworld due to his sadistic nature. The woman inside the house was his wife. Apparently the two had had an argument, and the aforementioned incident was Sam's way of punishing her for upsetting him. Spousal abuse wasn't out of the ordinary for Sam, as he enjoyed recounting a story to his associates, where one day he forced his wife to put a gun in her mouth and pull the trigger. When the gun clicked, Sam laughed and told her that he had removed the bullets. Despite the evidence the police had, no arrests would be made as Sam was protected by a complex network of corrupt cops, judges, and politicians that he had carefully cultivated over the years. He was known to brag that there wasn't any case he couldn't fix, and it was even rumored that, in exchange for a fee, he would help out other criminals get their cases thrown out too. But regardless of his immense influence, Sam wasn't popular amongst his fellow mobsters, who both feared and loathed him due to his eccentric personality and callous disregard for others, and for these reasons, he would never become a made man. Sam enjoyed killing, and would routinely kidnap unfortunate debtors, and bring them to the soundproofed torture chamber he had built in the basement of his house. He was also known for unpredictable mood swings, where he would be laughing one minute and on the floor crying the next. An associate of his named Chucky Grimaldi would even allege that Sam was a devil worshipper, saying, quote, Sam was convinced that he was indeed Satan's disciple. When he was in trouble or getting heat, he would drop to his knees and pray. The ritual was always preceded by a violent rage, during which he would stomp the floor and swear endlessly. He seemed to lose contact with the world around him, and his anger propelled him through a series of spasms into some private hell, where only he and the devil could enter. On all fours, he would smash his fists against the floor in frustration and rage. The drool would pour from his mouth in streams to form frothy puddles beneath his face. His gravelly voice would become a croak so guttural that his words were barely comprehensible. Once he had reached this state, he would pray to the devil. But just who was Sam DeStefano, and why was his unusual behavior tolerated by his bosses in the outfit? The story of Mad Sam begins on September 13th, 1909, when he was born in the city of Streator, Illinois. Sam was the son of two Italian immigrants who had arrived in the United States only 6 years beforehand. His mother was a homemaker who looked after Sam and his 6 siblings while his father was a coal miner. Shortly after Sam's birth, the family moved to Herrin, Illinois, so Sam's father could work in the local coal mine. But after labor disputes in the area led to the deaths of 23 miners in the Herrin massacre,
The legendary RoboCop is back.
Led to the deaths of 23 miners in the Herrin massacre, the family moved once again, this time to Chicago's Little Italy neighborhood. Like many of the local youths, Sam grew up idolizing the grizzled gangsters he saw driving fancy cars and wearing expensive suits around the neighborhood. As a teenager, he committed various petty crimes that included shoplifting and vandalism. But it wasn't until 1927 that he had his first real brush with the law. In November of that year, Sam and an associate of his named Ralph Orlando kidnapped a 17-year-old girl as she was leaving a movie theater. The pair then drove their captive to a garage where 7 more men were waiting. Fortunately, though, a bystander had witnessed the kidnapping take place and informed police, who promptly raided the garage and placed Sam and his accomplices under arrest. At trial, both Sam and Orlando were convicted of rape, and during sentencing, Orlando screamed at the top of his lungs that when he got out of jail, he was going to kill both the arresting officer and the attorney who had convicted him. For this outburst, the judge sentenced him to 10 years in prison, while Sam received a more lenient sentence of only 3 years. Later in life, Sam would frequently claim that if he hadn't been falsely convicted of rape, he would have become president of the United States. While in prison, Sam became acquainted with members of a Chicago street gang called the 42 Gang, whose members included many future Chicago outfit heavyweights such as Sam Giancana, Milwaukee Phil, Cockeyed Louie, and Willie Potatoes. Sam officially joined the gang after his release, and soon became involved in their illegal gambling and bootlegging operations. As the Edwardsville Intelligencer newspaper reported, on August 22, 1932, a 22-year-old Sam went to a hospital on the west side of Chicago, with bullet wounds in his hip and abdomen, which he refused to explain. The next year, Sam and 3 other men robbed a bank in New Lisbon, Wisconsin. After their getaway car broke down, the 4 men separated and ran into the woods, where Sam would be arrested by police after they discovered him trying to climb a tree. For this, he would be sentenced to 40 years in prison, but he only ended up serving 11 before his sentence was commuted by Wisconsin Governor Julius Heil. He was released in 1944, but would again find himself behind bars after he was caught by undercover cops selling counterfeit sugar ration stamps. While doing his time in Leavenworth Penitentiary in Kansas, Sam met and became friendly with high-ranking outfit member Paul Ricca. According to gangster Frank Collada, Sam was able to convince Ricca to give him $100,000 so he could set up a loan sharking operation back home in Chicago, claiming that within the first year he'd be so successful that he'd be able to pay Ricca $1 million. Ricca trusted Sam and agreed to finance his plan. Upon his release, Sam returned back to Chicago, and for income tax purposes, he took a job with the city as a garbage dump foreman. Using the money provided by Ricca, Sam and his brother Mario started up their loan sharking business. Mario was a made man with the outfit, and it wasn't long before the 2 DeStefano brothers were the richest loan sharks in the city. Ricca's gamble had paid off, and Sam was able to give him the $1 million he promised ahead of schedule. Sam became notorious for the brutal torture methods he would apply to anyone who was late with their payments. It was even rumored that he would give loans to people who had a history of not paying their debts just so he would have an excuse to torture someone. Stories of his cruelty quickly became legendary within the Chicago underworld, such as when a man named Peter Capoletti took off with $20,000 of Sam's money. Peter left the city and ran away to Milwaukee thinking he would be safe there, but Sam's network of informants extended all throughout the Midwest, and so it wasn't long before he was kidnapped and brought back to Illinois. Peter was handcuffed to a radiator in the basement of a restaurant owned by Mario in the town of Cicero. He was then tortured by Sam and his crew for 5 days. Sam then invited several of his mob friends and Peter's family to a dinner party he was hosting upstairs in Mario's restaurant. As dessert was being served, Sam made a big speech explaining how Peter had stolen from him, but since he was such a nice guy, he was going to let him live. As this was happening, Sam's goons went downstairs and gave Peter a final beating before urinating on him and bringing him upstairs. As Peter's family saw the state he was in, they promised that they'd pay back the money owed to Sam with interest. Stories such as this were incredibly prevalent at the time, and they convinced the higher-ups in the outfit to put as much distance between themselves and Sam as possible. But since he was making them so much money, the bosses thought it would be prudent for them to put a spy in his crew who would report back to them if Sam did something that could potentially endanger them. And that spy was none other than Tony Spilotro, a rising star in Milwaukee Phil's crew. Tony went to work for Sam as a debt collector and enforcer. One day, Tony met up with Frank Collada and told him that they needed to go pick up a lawyer who had been avoiding Sam. The 2 found him in a coffee shop and convinced him to get in their car. As they were driving, Tony questioned him as to why he hadn't returned any of Sam's calls. The lawyer brushed off the inquiry and claimed that he had just been busy and didn't mean any disrespect. The 3 then entered Sam's house and were greeted by his wife, who told them that he was downstairs. When Sam's wife was out of eyesight, Tony kicked the lawyer down the stairs, and then he and Frank tied him up in a chair. Sam then appeared wearing a bathrobe and pajamas, and he started screaming curses at the lawyer before repeatedly slapping him in the face. Sam claimed that he had given the lawyer $900 to appear in court and help one of Sam's clients avoid a prison sentence, but he never showed, making Sam look bad. Sam then pulled out an ice pick and stabbed the lawyer several times. He then whipped out his penis and peed on the man. The lawyer was crying and begging for his life, which Sam agreed to spare. As the bloody and urine-covered lawyer was thanking Sam for not killing him, Sam yelled, "Woman," to the top of the stairs. His wife then appeared and said, "Yes, honey?" and Sam ordered her to go make him a coffee. Tony and Frank then brought the lawyer back to the restaurant where they had found him. Despite his dark reputation, the fact that he was not officially a part of the Chicago outfit convinced the FBI that they might be able to get him to become an informant. The FBI heavily suspected that Sam was behind the murder of a local businessman named Arthur Adler, who had fallen behind on his debt payments. They hoped that if they were able to convince Sam that they had him dead to rights, he would then agree to become an informant in order to stay out of jail. One day when two FBI agents visited Sam at his home, they were surprised when he presented them with 2 cups of coffee, which he claimed had been prepared using special Italian coffee beans. The agents were grateful, unaware that he had peed in both cups beforehand. When they questioned Sam about his involvement in Adler's murder, he screamed for his wife and 2 children to come downstairs. With the 3 assembled on the couch, Sam yelled, "These 2 gentlemen are FBI agents. They have come out here to accuse me of killing Arthur Adler. I cry out to God up above. If I am guilty of killing Arthur Adler, may God come down, right now, and put cancer in the eyeballs of you, and you, and you," as he pointed a finger in each of his family members' faces. Sam had no love for his family, and in 1955, he and his brother Mario killed their other brother Michael. Sam Giancana had learned that Michael DeStefano had developed a serious drug habit, and it was causing him to inadvertently blurt out confidential outfit information. Giancana put out a contract on Michael, which Sam and Mario were only too happy to accept. Sam carried out the killing personally, stabbing his brother to death with a knife. After the deed was done, Sam stripped his brother's body and began scrubbing him with soap and water in order to cleanse his soul. In 1963, Sam was at the apex of his power and influence, but the seeds for his eventual downfall would be sown that same year, and it all started with something as seemingly inconsequential as a parking ticket. Instead of simply paying the fine and going on with his life, Sam chose to fight the ticket in court. He knew that Leo Foreman, a real estate agent who moonlighted as one of his debt collectors, was friends with the judge. Sam thought that Leo would be able to use his relationship with the judge to get the ticket thrown out. This plan might have worked, but Sam enjoyed causing trouble in court, and he went on several unhinged rants during his testimony. He showed up to court on a gurney, and when the judge ordered him to be quiet, Sam opened his briefcase and pulled out a bullhorn and continued shouting. The judge actually threw out the parking ticket, but fined Sam several $100s for being in contempt of court. Unsurprisingly, this sent Sam into a blistering rage where he cursed everyone present in the courtroom, but most of his bile was spewed directly at Foreman, whom he held to be directly responsible for his predicament. To make matters even worse, Sam began to suspect that Foreman had been stealing money from him. He went to Foreman's office to confront him, and quickly lost his temper. He screamed, "You think Action Jackson had it rough? You're gonna think he was on a picnic." This was in reference to William Action Jackson, a former member of Sam's crew. Sam had suspected that Jackson was talking to the FBI, and so he had him kidnapped and tortured to death.
A horde of demons has invaded the city.
The FBI, and so he had him kidnapped and tortured to death. Foreman didn't appreciate this threat, and so he pulled a gun on Sam and forcibly ejected him from his office. Foreman knew that Sam wasn't the kind of guy who would let an embarrassment like this go, and so he kept a low profile and tried to stay out of Sam's sight. A couple of weeks later, Foreman received a call from Mario, who claimed that Sam was ready to forgive him if he helped them fence a stolen diamond, and also paid back the money he had stolen. Foreman accepted these terms, and to seal the deal, he agreed to go to Mario's house so they could play cards. When Foreman arrived, he was greeted by Mario, as well as Chucky Grimaldi, another of Sam's enforcers. The 3 played cards for a couple of hours, before Mario asked Foreman if he wanted to see the new bomb shelter that he had recently built in his basement. Foreman agreed, and the 3 descended down the stairs. As the basement door was closed, Tony Spilotro appeared from the shadows and shot Foreman several times. Foreman was wounded but still alive, and as he laid on the ground bleeding, Sam appeared. Wearing his pajamas, Sam declared that Foreman was to be a sacrifice to Satan, and then he, Mario, Grimaldi, and Spilotro took turns torturing Foreman until he finally died from blood loss. By this point, the police knew that Sam was responsible for several vicious murders, but he was too smart to leave any evidence behind. But the police were determined to take him off the streets by any means necessary, and so over the next several years, Sam found himself in and out of prison for minor offenses, such as voter fraud and illegal possession of a firearm. But it wasn't until September 1972 where police had a major break. Charles Grimaldi had flipped and became a government witness. He told police everything about the Foreman killing, and so Sam, Mario, and Tony Spilotro were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. During the preliminary hearings, Sam continued his old courtroom antics, frequently showing up to court wearing his pajamas and flashing his penis at the judge. Sam's behavior generated a ton of media attention and unnerved his co-defendants, who were worried that Sam's outbursts would put their own future in jeopardy. But they weren't the only ones who were concerned, as the bosses of the outfit were also getting tired of Sam's foolishness. The new leader of the outfit, Tony Big Tuna Accardo, convened a secret meeting to decide what to do about Sam. Crucially, Paul Rica, who had been Sam's earliest benefactor and his only supporter in the outfit's top ranks, had died back in October. With no one to vouch for him, Accardo gave Sam's co-defendants permission to take him out. On April 30th, 1973, Sam held a meeting with Mario and Spilotro in his garage where the three were to discuss plans on how to eliminate Grimaldi. Instead, however, Spilotro shot Sam 2 times with a shotgun at close range, tearing his arm off and killing him instantly. No one would ever be convicted of this crime. Sam was buried at the Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Hillside, Illinois. And that was the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe.